one thing I've learned by going through some of these accounts with you is the importance of tracking. We talked about your daily pacer when we first started recording several months ago, but now that I've gotten in and really been using it a lot on some higher spend accounts, the thing that's underrated about it is it prevents you from making emotional knee jerk decisions based on the day's performance. Because you can look at holistically how all of your spend on every platform is pacing and how that's affecting your total revenue, not just on platform ROAS, which looks really spotty, especially if you're using it natively in like Meta or Google.
Yeah, I think that's really important to keep in mind where your trend line is. Kind of like, with stocks, you look at your moving, your 50-day moving average or whatever, like really trying to understand where you're pacing against that, but then also pacing against your goals. It can really keep you from making poor decisions when there's just a slow slump. A good example for that is, obviously we're in November. Brands are building up towards the Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We're slowly scaling budgets. I have a couple brands that this is their peak. Like they do most of their ad spend during this month. So we're scaling from one brand literally zero to, you know, the goal is to get up to, 300 to 500,000 a day on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So to ramp that, like you have to be very aggressive. You need a lot of creative. You don't need many campaigns, but having a few different campaign types is super important. But, as you're, maybe doubling spend day over day, there's going to be a couple days where your MER might not look the greatest because your revenue, your demand captures is still catching up with that demand generation. And so there's a few days in there that might look really, really bad. And, having a really good forecast and pacing document is going to help you, avoid not scaling when and you look year over year. Oh no, like next week the sales roll in. We need to buy the audience now. So
Yeah, buy the impression now so they can hit with your retargeting assets later.
yeah, exactly. And I think, this time of month too, November, early November can be very slow for a lot of brands. They go into, Q4, they go into November. It's Black Friday, Cyber Monday month. And you expect the sales to just start hitting November 1st because you're looking at November as a whole, like all year long, and you're forecasting. And a lot of folks, don't always. I mean, they do, but it takes a minute. But like, you need to consider that most of that revenue is windfall from the second half of the month. The first half of November generally can look very soft. Uh, I think this year especially it's softer. The government shutdown hasn't helped. Consumer sentiment's the lowest it's been since 1980. They just released some numbers around that. There's a lot of headwinds in the auction right now, and it's just evident on a lot of accounts. And we've seen some brands starting to pull in their Cyber 5 deals early and launching their deals now, which also puts a lot of pressure on the auction. So I don't know, weird time of year, weird week in e-commerce for sure. Still confident for the second half of the month.
Yeah, weird week in global politics, which is always, comes at the worst possible time in mid-November. But it's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
It's kind of like what you, sorry to cut you off. It's what you spoke about a few months ago, the explore exploit cycle of Meta. And this is the explore period, right? This is where you need to invest the money to explore the audience and get as many eyeballs as you can because the exploit section is coming in a short 1.5 weeks.
Exactly. And I think that, that metaphor, or that algo can be summed up in a number of different ways. The fill the sponge, squeeze the sponge metaphor, grow the fruit, harvest the fruit, you know, there's a lot of metaphors that apply to that. But yeah, exactly. It's the demand generation that's super important right now, focusing on, primarily new customer percentage, still a key metric, you know, new reach, cost per new visit, percentage of new visits, really looking at some of the upper funnel action. We've noticed, the last 3 weeks, like add to carts extremely high, looks very solid, but people aren't converting. There's a lot of window shoppers, which is normal. Fill those carts up right now and be ready with the deal to close on the end of the month.
Yeah, and consumers year over year for Black Friday just get smarter and smarter. They know that the softer deals are starting now, and then they'll get a little bit stronger, and then by Cyber Monday, it's the hottest deal ever. So I think it's important if you're just looking at the meta dashboard tactically to compare your day to that same day in the previous year, or to compare the that like 3 days that 3 day period, the lagging 3 days versus the previous year's lagging 3 days. Not to just look at what's our revenue here divided by 30 days in November versus what was it last year, because that's not accounting for the inevitable ramp up that you're having coming into the actual BFCM week.
Yeah, exactly. And just making sure that your comps are accurate and you're looking at the right data is super important. I think on the consumer piece, it's funny because, I'll share some of the deals that were, maybe some of our brands are running. And just this weekend specifically, just shared a few of the upcoming deals with, some of my wife's friends. And they were like, not into it, right? They're like 20% off. Like, that's nothing. Like, what happened to like Black Friday where you go to line up in Best Buy for 6 hours so you can get a TV for 70% off? Like, what? It's almost like the deals are just getting smaller and smaller year over year. And I always use, my wife's friends as kind of my reality check on like, all right, is something gonna hit? Is it on tempo for the market? And it's interesting because that pushback on like sharing some of the deals, 25%, like, okay, cool, it's great. But like when a brand's doing 20 to 25% deals all year long on different weekends, and then Black Friday rolls around and the deal's just a little bit better, I don't think it does much for the consumer. It's just another weekend weekend to buy. Maybe there's more holiday shopping involved this time around and causes a much bigger spike. But I don't know. I think on the brand side, the deals get, chinsier and chinsier. And on the ad side, the costs get higher and higher. And on the consumer side, there's just more and more options and everybody's doing a deal. So what makes your deal better than the next guy? So
That's a
yeah.
really good point. It's a
It-
really, really good point. When there's always these welcome 10 or welcome 15 offers, and then all of a sudden there's 25%, it's like, well, not enough for me to buy right now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the other element is, yeah, yeah, there are deals that are good. Like we have a couple brands that are just running crazy offers and they're doing really, really well. But it's like on that level, it's a volume play. So that is why you need to get up to 3, 4, 500K a day and spend because, oh, this is where you move volume, period, for the year on this specific deal. And it's great, but yeah, it really comes down to who the brand is, what their margins are, what their who their customers are, and just kind of meeting their audience with an offer that's going to convert.
So let's talk about deal structure then for a second. We're talking about these 25% off, 50, 75% off, these crazy deals. Is percentage always the best way to go? Or do you ever find there's a lot of life and BOGO deals? Or the context is I was speaking with the founder the other day who said, this is the highest perceived deal because it looks like 80% off, but my margin on these products is so good that we can do a buy a $30 product and get the $100 product. So the perceived value is higher. Anyway, yeah. How do you think about bundling?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the brand and the product. Uh, it's like, does 50% off or does BOGO sound better, read better? I think BOGO does in a lot of ways, and you move more product that way anyways. I think for some brands though, just a flat percentage off is really generous and really good, and probably the most widely used. I do like tiered sales where it's spend X and get X% off plus free shipping. Those are great because it boosts that cart value, which is really, really important on D2C. Seen some apparel brands do really well with that, just really trying to load up the cart. But it depends. Yeah, it's different for every brand. We have a brand, their AOVs, a few $100s. They're doing a BOGO offer and it's crushing because they're pricely products. Getting kind of the concept is, buy a gift for yourself and have one to give for somebody else, or buy a gift for someone else and gift yourself one as well. So that's obviously pretty effective play.
Yeah, no size or yeah, no size fits all, not one size fits
One
all, I
size
guess what I'm
fits
trying to
all.
say. Yeah, yeah, I guess that doesn't apply at this level. I found a really good bundle offer on a golf brand that I thought was super interesting. They were in it last year. So
Hmm,
golfing products are obviously more expensive. It was spend 100, get 10%, spend 200, get 20, spend 300, get 30, spend 400, get 40, 500, get 50.
that's cool. That's a great deal.
So you can see this threshold of like, if I'm gonna spend 300, might as well spend 500 because I'm saving that extra, well, what is it, like $80. It actually ends up
Yeah.
being a huge saving. The incentive, I think,
Wow.
is pretty cool.
That is cool. I especially like guys that golf, spending, yeah, if you get $500 worth of, you know, golf gear, like at the cost of 250, like who's not going to load up on that?
100%. And if you're golfing, you're buying the product anyways. Yeah, you need
Yeah.
gloves, you need tees, you need clubs. Like it's
Yeah.
like any sport. It's this never-ending thing. You always need gear. So
Yep.
yeah, I thought that was a pretty good one.
That is cool. You'll have to
When
send
you
me the
get
brand
to
after this.
Yeah, yeah, I will. I think you'll probably be familiar with them.
Yeah.
Um, Next question. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so when you get to that 300 to 500K a day mark,
Hmm.
how much emphasis do you place on available inventory or moving the products that you want versus moving the products that you think are going to sell on the consumer side? Like, does that play any role on
Yeah.
inventory decisions?
Well, generally on the ad side, you want to just set it up that the spend is going to go to whatever product is selling the best, and has the highest ROAS. Like, and this kind of plays into something we're seeing more recently where segmentation has just continued to get less and less effective over the last couple of years where you don't even really segment it. Like you segment on some big accounts by products, but even that level of segmentation I think Meta is starting to do away with, uh, to where it's literally you just put all your ads in, let Meta deliver, and ultimately the best, the most profitable ones will win. So with that, it's just making sure that, uh, yeah, ideally you're going in with enough inventory on your top products. Generally, you'll know ahead of time, what's going to sell well. I mean, yeah, we have a brand that was crushing it. Had some inventory come in for one of their SKUs, crushing it in September, end of September, early October, and then that SKU went out, and ever since it's been just headwinds because it was that SKU that was really really carrying us. So uh, yeah, you wanna be conscious of that, but also just be ready that if that goes out and you have to turn those ads off, then uh, could yeah. It'll shift things a little bit.
Yeah, I find those are conversations you often have at that mid-level mark between, call it 8 million to 25 million. There's always that, not always, but there's often the conversation of, okay, if we run out of this, we need to be ready with ads for this next SKU or this next product. Especially, I'm rewinding to COVID days now when everybody was so basically getting all their product from China. That was a big concern. It was, okay, our lead time went from 60 days to now 85 days on this
Mhm.
product. So how is that affecting your ad spend? Do you ever chat with like the purchasing teams or manufacturing teams to
Inventory? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, every now and then, like, well, there'll generally be a channel where updates are getting posted live from the inventory team, and it'll be, hey, we're almost out of this, or we just got a lot, more of this, and we'll, keeping up to date on what's in stock or what's about to go out of stock. It's the hardest with apparel because there's so many different size variants. So you could have, a product that just really, really does well, but the key size variant is out of stock, and you have ads that are running to that variant that are still good ads. It's just your conversion rate on those drops a lot because your primary size variant is out of stock. Well, there's other ones that are still available. That's a really common problem that we see a lot. I think there's an opportunity somewhere to like have more post back to the ad account that shows what the available inventory is kind of in more real time. Maybe Meta will build this in at some point where there's essentially a data stream going back into the ad account informing Meta like what your inventory volumes are, so it'll know how to deliver accordingly. And then maybe if something is getting low, it'll automatically cause you to now maybe Meta wouldn't make as much money this way, but if something's getting low on inventory, it would automatically pull back spend on that SKU with the assumption that you'll have higher margins if you don't spend on it because it'll likely sell organically. You don't need the extra advertising to move those extra 50 units. Um,
Hmm.
I feel like
I
there's
don't
an
know if we see a
app
reality
somewhere
where
in there,
Meta is.
but
I was gonna say, yeah, that's a great
yeah,
business idea or a great Shopify app. I don't see a reality where Meta is saying, you know what, we should pull back spend on this. Like, you don't really need to spend that much here.
yeah, especially if it's a hot SKU, it's gonna wanna drive
But
it.
it's true though. I've seen that a lot in apparel. You run out of men's medium large or women's small medium. You can see the exact time the inventory ran out by looking at the return on ad spend from that creative.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's pretty phenomenal.
That's interesting. I know that we at some point we wanted to talk about campaign structure. Is that something you want to go into on this call, or should we save it for next week?
Yeah, maybe for next week. I will say consolidation is working. CBO still crushing. Our whole testing framework and our mindset's shifted in the last 3 weeks. So I'll go into more of that on our call next week. Rather than a separate scale, rather than a separate test ad set where you duplicate ads into your scale campaigns, we're leaning more towards just broader CBO, scale it where it lies kind of format. Obviously, there's that in itself can create a lot of efficiencies. But yeah, we'll have more to
Yeah,
share
because
on
you're
that
not
next
having to
week.
go through learning twice. Basically, it's you don't have to test on lower spend,
Yeah,
duplicate into your scaled campaign, let it readjust. You just scale it right where it's sitting.
exactly. Almost like 2020, where you just had CBOs, new ads come in, throw up a new ad set, minimum spend on it, and let it ride.
It feels more efficient. I can definitely say that there's less moving pieces inside the ad account.
Yeah, and I think Meta is going to continue to take away more and more of the tactics and control and hacks. So it's like the more we can kind of get in line with what they're building, it might not be fully functional now, but it will be eventually. And there's certain things that like a year ago I would never have run because it was too early. But now as it's evolved, those settings and different features are now effective. So just keeping
Yeah,
that
at
in
the end of the
mind
day,
that
you kind of have to you have to do what Meta tells you, really. You have to follow the way that their algorithm is changing and just adapt to it. You can't try
yeah,
to force fit old ways of doing things into, the current account structure.
yeah. And there's some advertisers out there that really think Meta is going to be exactly like AppLovin pretty soon, which it could be, where there's no ad sets. You just put all your creative in, tell it what you want, and it goes and does it. If that is the case, the only way to segment is going to be on an account level and a pixel level. So then again, we're kind of just moving up the chain, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what 2026 really looks like for Meta and where they're taking things.
Yeah. So two more questions for you if you have time. Are you
Yeah,
good for a minute
yeah,
here?
yeah,
Okay. Okay, perfect. So the first one is on creative diversity. We've been talking about this a lot internally as a team, how you can't just make minor changes anymore, that it needs to be a dramatic change in the total creative or the total copy.
yeah.
How much importance should brands be placing on that? And what exactly does that mean tactically?
Yeah, more importance this month than it was last month. Not that there was a ton of changes this month. I feel like Meta just started implementing more of the things that they've been pushing in the sense of, candidly, the accounts that we have now that are less diverse in their creative, they're the ones that are struggling in November with whatever updated, in the last month. Uh, the brands that are more consolidated and have wildly different creative, wildly different, like almost looking like a different brand. Those are the ones that are doing really good. Uh, Iterations are irrelevant now, in my opinion. I think it's still good to figure out various hooks and various text over images. But if a lot of that stuff looks the same, throw it all in a flex ad format and let Meta decide what to deliver when and to who. Don't try to make an individual ad unit for it. I think this. I think fundamentally the system hasn't been able to handle the amount of AI iterations that folks have been creating, and that's why we're getting ad outages every week, it seems. Uh, so that's a big element to it too. I literally told a brand the other day, do they do newborn toddler stuff? I said, throw Photoshop a baby into the sky, put clouds around it, and a lightning bolt behind it, and put the product on it, and make it look just wild and out there and different than anything they created. Because at a certain point, there's only so many, Meta's going to categorize all of these flat lays on a nice aesthetic, well decorated bedroom. Like it just puts it all in the same bucket. It's going to go to the same audience, and that account is not going to get the performance that it could be because of just meta is in a lot of ways limiting it. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's the another one. Meta's been pushing it really really hard the last year, and I think now it's more important than ever that it is diverse as can be.
So it's kind of just being creative. It's like the definition of the term. You're going to put creative in there. Just do something unique, do something new, have fun, make something that you think is funny, and see if the market thinks it's funny too.
Exactly. Quote of the week right there. Be creative.
Be creative. Yeah.
It's true.
It is true though.
Yeah.
It's tactically it's abandon your brand guidelines, not
Yeah.
completely, but pretty much do
Yeah.
things that are unique that you wouldn't have done before.
Yeah. Exactly. Just be disruptive as much as we hate the term, but it's
Yeah.
exactly what it takes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's the takeaway of the week. Yeah, looking forward to touching base next week. We'll talk more about account structure, which I think will be really useful for everybody just staging their Black Friday campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
Andrew.
Thanks a lot. See ya.